Church. So Drake, you're on, sir.
Thank you for coming. Welcome inside the Catholic Church. Hope you can all hear me back there. Catholic Church has been around for about 2,000 years. And it's done a lot of wonderful things and not so wonderful things during that time. These are aspects of the church, in my humble opinion. Those clubs out here that just talk about one aspect of the church come across as a little simple-minded and a little smug about it. And there are some clubs here that are disrespectful of the church, and I find them to be really a bunch of cranky curmudgeons that have an axe to grind. But today we're going to talk about both aspects of the church, how it's run, how it's organized, and the money behind it. Catholic Church has 1.3 billion people who follow it. 1 in every 7 people around the world are Catholics. The population, 23% of the population in America is Catholic, and 1 out of 2 Christians are Catholic. The church was started during apostolic times from 33 AD to 100 AD. During this time, apostles Peter, Paul, and James spread a reform movement within Judaism. That is, it started converting pagans and Jews to Christians. At that time, these ideas were considered heretical, radical, revolutionary, and a threat to the established laws and traditions. Therefore, Christians were persecuted and killed as they undermined the Roman and pagan state and Jewish authority. And the church is apostolic, which means the church is founded by apostles. And how old is your church? Well, Judaism is 3,500 years old, Catholic 2,000, Lutheran 500, Anglican, the church Henry VIII get divorced in, is 500, Baptist 400, Methodist 300. Some of the core beliefs of Catholicism is the beliefs of monotheism, belief in one God. That Jesus is both the Son and human form of God, and there's life after death. And some of these newly established basic tenements were that salvation can be had by anyone willing to believe in God. People's lifetimes was only in their mid-30s and back in the day. So life was hard, surviving difficult, with backbreaking work, hardships, and toil, and few pleasures. Eternal bliss was waiting for believers after leaving this earth and their heavenly bodies. Their earthly bodies. This gave average people hope that their life had meaning. The hope for eternal life has caused hundreds of billions over 20th centuries to convert over time, and numbers too big to ignore. So, with this religion and with any other religion, you get a love for God, which is agape, which means it fills you up inside with a spiritual kind of love based on the endorphins that are released in you. This makes you feel comfortable, satisfied, as well, and makes you happy and do good deeds, besides having hope, which is what religion is all about. A couple things, major things that happened with the Catholic Church. There was a great schism in 1054 where the church divided into 2 sections. One, the western part in Roman Catholicism, and Eastern Orthodox, which was in Constantinople, which is now Istanbul. The difference between the two is a little bit minor. It concerns the Trinity. In 1500, Luther challenged the church and broke off into that section. In the middle of all this was the Crusades, which happened in the 11th century. They were an attempt for Europeans to take the Holy Land from the Muslims that were living there. There were at least 4 Crusades. Many people romanticize this and think this is just noble, quixotic knights that run around and do this. And we have courses in here in the villages that romanticize it. But it's really difficult to travel from Paris to Jerusalem because it's 2,400 miles one way and 5,000 miles back and forth. So tens of thousands of people actually lost their lives in traveling to the Holy Lands to do this. And in addition, between 50,000 to 150,000 people lost their lives in battles and in transit to do this. This was a failure because they never got it back from the Muslims. The Inquisition lasted at least 250 years and was a time to root out heresy in Europe. And the Spanish Inquisition alone persecuted 150,000 people. Pope Gregory made the calendar official in the late 1500s, and then there was the King James Bible version. Getting into more modern day terms, the church is worth $75 billion and is the third largest landowner in the world, behind the King of Saudi Arabia and King Charles. It owns 177 million acres worldwide, or 265,000 square miles, an area the size of Texas. It went on a substantial church building program about 200 years ago. That's why there are so many churches. There are about 17,500 churches in America today. There used to be 20,000, but they have consolidated. The church owns 26,000 properties in America alone, 6,800 Catholic schools, and 650 hospitals, and 1,400 long-term health care situations in 50 states. So the church is very involved in education and in health care. And many of you from your area remember and know the Catholic school in your area, or even the parish, and remember its name, and know that Catholic education is quite excellent because it's private and it's expensive also, but a lot of dedication to cause. And that the Catholic Church is the largest non-governmental provider of healthcare services in the world. Worldwide, the church has 5,500 hospitals, and 2/3 of them in developing countries. The church manages 1/4 of the world's healthcare facilities. So they have hospitals in the Philippines, in India, in Brazil, and they treat HIV patients, and they even have orphanages. There's 300 orphanages in America, harboring 50,000 children. And about that healthcare in the United States, well, 1 out of 6 beds is in a Catholic hospital. So they are on the forefront of taking care of people worldwide, their health. Vatican City is the smallest sovereign state in the world. It consumes 110 acres, 600 people live here, and the popes have lived here on and off for 700 years. The Vatican is supported by tourism money, stamps, publications, and admission fees, as well as the Vatican Bank. Vatican Bank is part of the Vatican itself. It's called the Works of Religion. It's a privately held financial institution founded in 1942. Its purpose is to safeguard and administer property of works of religion and charity. It only accepts deposits from Catholic institutions and manages that money and provides services. Total assets are $8 billion. It's secretive and has been involved in some fraud and embezzlement schemes over the years. It has 15,000 clients and has investments in banking, insurance, chemicals, and real estate. The dividends from this help pay the $300 million it takes to run the Vatican. Vatican has the museum. It has 70,000 works of art. It's been around for 500 years. 20,000 of them are on display. It's a major source of information. And so is the Vatican Library. It holds 1 million pieces of books and etc. in it. Specifically, it's a major source of history, theology, philosophy, and law. About the money, there's about 80 million Catholics in America, and only 1/3 of them go to church weekly. So the average donation is $10. That puts it at about $250 million per week, $1 billion per month, or about $12 billion a year from the states. And with lucrative government contracts and grants, hundreds of millions or more are added in. Not to mention the other countries that contribute. For instance, in Germany, they contribute almost $7 billion in euros to the church every year. That's another 500 million in money that comes in. So worldwide, they rake in tens of billions of dollars per month. And we're going to find out how they spend that in a minute here. The hierarchy of the church comes with the Catholic parishioners, the monks and priests, the monks and nuns, the priests, the bishops, the archbishops, the cardinals, and the pope, putting a face to it that looks like this. Monks and nuns, priests, bishops, cardinals, and of course the pope. So, about monks. They prefer to work alone in a monastic life. They're not priests, but prefer to work in a secluded, peaceful way. They live in abbeys. There are 40 monasteries in the U.S. Worldwide, there are 400 monasteries with some 20,000 monks and nuns. Really, where the rubber meets the road is the priests. This is where you have contact with them. The priests are trained in seminaries here, and they go to school. There's about 180 seminaries in the U.S. with 5,000 students, and over 100,000 seminaries in over 100,000 student seminaries and over 6,000 seminaries. Tuition's about $9,000 per year, and benefactors contribute to it. It's a 7-year program that they go to, mainly in philosophy, spiritual guidance, and spiritual formation, and studies mainly about the New Testament. Then they're able, with this knowledge, they're able to give masses. And this is what they train for: how to take care of a parish and how to give masses that they would do. Now, the parish is a local church where parishioners attend masses and staffed by clergy members, and the head of the parish is the priest, or like a mayor. Parishes are the heart and soul of a church where baptisms, weddings, and confirmations are performed. In America, there's 42, let's switch that. There are 220,000 parishes around the world. And there's, like one here in the villages, St. Timothy's, for instance. And the priests work there. There are about 42,000 priests in the world, in America, 42,000 in America, and about 400,000 around the world. They make starting out about $30,000 a year, but half of that goes for housing for them. The average salary is about $50,000, half of it going for living space. So priests have many functions. Besides giving mass, they also help run the parish and the day-to-day activities of the parish. They also meet and greet new parishioners. They counsel, go to sick people, counsel them. They perform marriage ceremonies, and they counsel people. They help with the needy, and they help with community events. So the priests are very important, and usually those are the people that you normally just see running the church. However, every parish priest answers to the local bishop who runs the local diocese, which is a collection of local parishes. The bishop heads a diocese and is like a governor. In the U.S., there are 400 bishops, and there are about 5,100 worldwide. And they dress a bit differently. And there is a procedure to become a bishop. If a priest wants to be one, a name is submitted to a committee. The committee does research on this person, and then the committee then votes on things, and then they send a list to the Pope, who then chooses one. It takes about a year to do this. Bishops make about $70,000 a year or so, half of that again for housing. And they have conferences. So a bishop, again, runs the local diocese. And an archbishop, and I don't mean an arch in McDonald's or an arch here and a piece here and a bishop piece. Well, they run an archdiocese. And an archdiocese is a bit different. They are part of a larger grouping or a metropolitan area called the archdiocese. Usually in a large city, you'll have dozens and dozens of parishes. So an archbishop handles those, and there are plenty of them. There's hundreds of them, actually. Archdiocese in St. Louis, in St. Paul, in Philadelphia, in Denver, in New York, in Toronto, in any of the big cities like Omaha, Hartford, and one in Chicago. And who runs them is a bishop. This is Gerald Lacroix. He's a bishop, he runs the Quebec one. They used to have 200 parishes in Quebec. Now it's been consolidated down to 30. Who runs the one in Chicago is Cardinal Kupich. And he has 316 parishes to take care of, and he divides his time between managing the parishes in Chicago and going to Rome. Some of the cardinals have double duties. They're the cardinals with the Vatican, and they are archbishops as well, like he is. And the difference between a bishop and an archbishop is a bishop governs a diocese, and an archbishop governs an archdiocese and supervises all the bishops. There are bishops all over the world doing this. And the cardinals, there are 222 cardinals. And what they do is some of them are archbishops, and the ones that aren't form the Roman Curia, which is like a cabinet post. Remember, this Vatican is a sovereign state. So the Pope and the Vatican needs direction. So the cardinals then come in, and there's a Cardinal Secretary of State, for instance, one who deals with foreign governments, a cardinal for Catholic education, one for ethics, theology, missionary outreach, charities. They help advise the Vatican and the Pope on what's going on if they're not archbishops. So they're the Pope's right-hand men. To be a cardinal, obviously, you have to be chosen by the Pope from a list of bishops, and the Pope chooses that from a list. And to be a cardinal, you have to be pretty old in terms of having seniority is what I meant by that, and a lot of respect. So mainly they're in their late 60s or 70s. One of these will be chosen as Pope, but when they get to be this age, we all know that we all start falling apart. So that's one of the problems about being the Pope is you're old and have these health problems. But this comes up. And our current Pope is Pope Francis. His real name is Jorge Bergoglio. He's from Argentina. He's been Pope for 10 years. And he has a very liberal attitude and some socialist ideas. The Pope is at the top, like the President. He's elected by the cardinals. He defines all issues related to morality and faith, interprets biblical passages, clerical issues, and brings up his own interpretation of political and societal situations. The Pope is advised, of course, as I said, by cardinals, and he gets information on administration, finances, the money behind it, appointment of bishops, creation of dioceses, new cardinals, names of new saints. So the Pope has everything paid for. Meals, housing, special garments, specialized security, receives about $3,000 a month. He's worth about $2 million, Pope Francis, but he regularly gives substantial amounts of charity every year. Tourism to the Vatican has tripled since he became Pope. He lives in these papal apartments right next to the Vatican. They are beautiful and elegant in that they are wonderfully furnished, like out of a book. And he lives right here. Now, changing gears a bit, most people attend church to become a better person, to introduce faith to their kids, or to gain personal comfort and feel closer to God. The number one reason why U.S. church attendance has been decreasing is that members attend less frequently than years ago. Fewer than 4 in 10 Catholics actually attend church just once a week. In 1955, when I was born, it was 75% attended once a week. Back about 15 years ago, it was down to 45%. Now it's about in the low 30s. So why is this going on? Attendance has dropped because the church is not as relevant as it once was. Working women have come in and have families, and there's not that much time with family life, and there's more to do on Sundays. Even in staunch Catholic Ireland, they only go like once a week. But in America, the Catholic population has stayed the same, and that's because of the increased Hispanic population, which is mostly Catholic. And in Nigeria, they go to church once a week, 88% of the time. And 88% of Nigerians do that. In Bolivia, it's 55%. In Alabama, it's 55%. And well-educated and married people go to church more often than single or divorced people. And when both parents regularly went to church, 75% of their grown kids did. So it's a family thing. And so the trends in attendance have been going down in the black line. And even in Europe, only in Poland do they go, the young people go more often, but in most other the EU countries, they go less. So that's a general overview of the church that I wanted to get into. And now I want to get into more of the meat of the matter, is what the church did right. Many people complain the church does nothing right, but it did substantial things. Let's go into it. First of all, in my opinion, it was the Catholic Charities that are the biggest asset they have. It was founded in 1910. Their motto was working to reduce poverty in America. Their mission is to provide service to people in need, advocate justice, and call on the entire church to provide goodwill. So, Catholic Charities is ranked 13th largest charity in America. It has assets of $5 billion. It helps 12 million people a year. It has 2,600 service centers, and it actually employs 46,000 people. So if you want to know where the money goes that the church rakes in, it's to pay for things like this. And it has Catholic charities all over the place, and I wanted to show you. South Bend, Washington, Raleigh, Orlando, Houston, Cleveland, St. Paul. They have local response centers. I'm very proud to tell you about this, about what they have. Actually, the charities are a safety net, and they provide services through activities such as emergency services, food assistance programs, soup kitchens, healthcare, housing, basic clothing, and accessories for newborns, and help paying overdue utility bills and disaster relief. They're there when the government isn't. That's what I love about them so much. And in one community, one county, in Fairfield County in, I believe, Ohio, they had an $11 million budget for charities. They served 10,000 individuals. They provided 1,300,000 meals, and 87 cents of every dollar goes to, directly goes to client services. But if you look at the American Cancer Society, 73 cents of every dollar goes to research. Instead of paying for administrative fees, the Catholic Church is doing this, feeding our neighbors. And this is what I like to see so much. Out of that 12 million people that they help, they provide services, social services for 1 million of those 12 million people, like counseling services, adoption services, ESL for kids, Operation Head Start, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Alcoholics Anonymous. They also have food drives in these giant warehouses. They have clothing drives, and they have back-to-school supplies. This really helps out communities substantially because a lot of people are on the edge and are teetering. The church brings them back in. And of course, the other religions have all these social services available and these charities, like the Episcopalians, the Methodists, the Lutherans, the Baptists. They all have these, but it doesn't have this much money, muscle, and manpower, and money is what talks in religion. And this is the happiest picture. Every time I see this, it makes me smile. So, in another area, people don't even realize this, but the Catholic Church was very influential in architecture through the use of flying buttresses back about 800 years ago. They were external support structures holding up tall walls. Okay, so it took the vault, helped support the weight. It took the support of the weight of the vault, in that churches then were able to build very tall walls. Instead of having 12-foot wide walls that are extremely heavy and hard to build, these support structures made this happen. So what did that do? That made them put these beautiful stained glass windows in churches because of the tall walls that were thin. Now, these are more than just pretty, because back in the day, people couldn't read or write, and they couldn't understand the Mass, which was in Latin, that took till 1966 to change. So they saw pictures, and the light illuminated it, and they would understand the Bible back in the day, regular people with pictures, and that what the Bible was in stained glass. It's a beautiful way to illustrate something and show people by example of what's going on. And no more we see this than in Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. It has 27 of these support structures there that enable this to be 115 feet tall. It's so tall you could stand up a jet airliner in it. This took 180 years to build and took $1 billion to build in Paris, France. But what happened was it was able to have these very influential structures here that influenced other churches in the area and in Europe to build very tall structures using their ideas. Was able to do this. And once you get inside these magnificent churches that did cost a lot of money and did take a long time to build, you were mesmerized because what you see you've never seen before. This was a shock and awe experience for many people. In Notre Dame, you could seat 6,000 parishioners. So this was just a tremendous experience for people and was again enabled to people to come to church. And besides just seeing things and seeing the pictures in the walls, they were able to hear the music from church organs. In Notre Dame, there's an 8,000 pipe piece organ there. And so they have an organ director, a choir director, so you get sound as well as coming in. So you're going to hook them that way. And with these organs, of course, they had choirs to help the average person get involved with church activities by singing praises to the church and to the Lord. My parents were in a Baptist choir, so I know all about this. And yes, the other religions have choirs too, but the Catholics had them 1,200 years before they did. And with that, with these songs, you get Catholic hymns. Many of them you know, heard about, like Michael Row the Border Shore, Ode to Joy by Beethoven, Dominique the Singing Young Nun, Ave Maria, and Amazing Grace, which is written in 1796 by the Anglicans. And you remember that song in that film, what's that one? Sound of Music, Doe, a deer, a female deer? That was written by an 8th century Benedictine monk who accidentally invented it, and the musical staff. He was very influential. So we get this music, and besides that, you get Christmas carols that was adapted from the Catholics and other religions. And you get songs like We Three Kings and Holy Night, Joy to the World, things like that. And specifically, those bring back a lot of memories. It doesn't matter if you're Catholic, it doesn't matter if you're spiritual. You still know the words of these songs, you know the melody. They come up every year, especially on WBLG. And they come up all the time, and they're part of your life actually. And then usually they are associated with good memories because it's around the holidays. So this influenced us, as well as religious paintings. For 1,800 years, painting was the sole cause. The religious activities were the sole cause for painting. And painters usually did things in Europe in regards to praying, giving praise to the church and to God. So we have the world's most famous paintings and sculptures like Michelangelo, La Pieta, David, the Sistine Chapel, and working in sculptures. This situation then influenced countless of generations of artists to work with new techniques and new mediums to be able to portray this. So this influenced art quite a bit, is what the Catholic Church did, and some of the world's most famous paintings are this way. When you go to any major art museum, 25% of their art will be religious oriented. This is faith through art. This influenced many artists this way. And in addition, monks were the only ones that could read or write in a village. And therefore, they make books out of parchment paper books, and they illustrated it a lot and put in these words in Latin. It would take one day to make one of these pages, and they are just gorgeous. And one thing about this is that the parchment paper was made from sheep or goat skin that had to be stretched. You can make about 8 pages out of this. There's a line running down this, and this then became the spine of the book. And they would make these parchment paper books, and in the 1500s, about 1550, Gutenberg would come along, and he'd take what they did, the monks did, and put it on paper with block type printing, and make the same thing that the monks did, but put it to make it more accessible to people and less costly on paper. So whenever you see a book, the Benedictine monks in Europe are ones that help stimulate this idea. That's where this comes from. And the church was, life revolved around the church in hundreds of small European communities and even in the United States. Markets, festivals, and religious ceremonies all took place there. It was all in one place. It was jack of all things. Why? You can get baptized in a church. You could go to parochial school nearby the church. You could, in the later days, have Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts in the church. You could get married there. You have Holy Thursdays, where you can meet with other people and have potluck dinners and religious festivals and have service and get to meet people at special functions like Christmas and Easter. So there was a great meeting place, and you could do other community events in the churches here. They were the mainstay of European communities. Usually the tallest place in any community you go to is the predominating theme of that lifestyle and that place out there. And how many saints are there? Thousands of them. And I consider saints slightly a bit psychotic and a bit they have martyr syndrome, but undeniably saints are worthwhile to study because of people like St. Joan of Arc, St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Francis of Assisi. These people are seminal. These people are worthwhile to know and are studied in college. Very influential. And there are 100 ecclesiastical universities scattered throughout North America, Europe, and South America. And the Pope approves these things. They're non-denominational. And if you're an aspiring priest and want to become a bishop, what to do is to go there and get your master's degree or whatever in canon law or ecclesiastical studies, and you could promote yourself to become a bishop, and if you know the right people, you could do well. So these are important for the church to have, as well as other people studying this. And the Catholic missions are important. One world, one mission. They have missionaries in dozens of countries. Actually, there are over 400,000 Catholic missionaries around the world. The Mormon Church has 67 full-time and 31,000 part-time missionaries, so it quadruples what the Mormon Church has. But this is very influential with other communities as they help out doing things. So, how the church built Western civilization was important. And they help build strong communities right now along with the other churches. So churches are an important and integral part of communities and part of Western civilization. So I've been a cheerleader for the church, got that. So I'm going to move on and not be. So where did the church go wrong? How could all these beautiful things that they've done go sideways? So let's find out. Certainly the Crusades were a form of cultural rape. This shouldn't have been done, but it was. And the church has had a problem with science. In 1633, Galileo proposed that the earth goes around the sun, or the heliocentric view of the universe. That is, the sun is at the center. He showed the people, they denied him, he was put under house arrest. It took the church until 1835 to admit that the sun is at the center of our solar system. Meanwhile, other planets, like Uranus and Neptune, were being discovered. It took the church 380 years to forgive Galileo by John Paul II in 1992. Clearly, all this could have been done a lot sooner. And the church is led by a lot of inbred, older thinking men who are a bit stodgy, old-fashioned, dogmatic, and that's because of a literal interpretation of the Bible. Well, the Bible was written 1,800 years ago. It has a lot of great moral examples in it, but it also tells of a time where there were kings and queens and people wandering around nomadically in deserts. We don't have that anymore. We all have sovereign states with people working in a global economy. And even Ephesus was a Roman seaport town, The Mediterranean Sea has retreated miles away from this, and things have changed. The church hasn't done that much change. And the church seems to be caught up in a idealistic, romanticized version of the world that sometimes doesn't meet reality very well. We're going to find that out. But we do get holy cow from the church and the New Orleans. Okay. From the year 800 to the year 1800, for a period of 1,000 years, the church has been involved in, indirectly or directly, in 70 wars. That's one every 15 years. So the church has had armies, and they support their own country that they're in, like Portugal, France, and Spain, and fight with them. And of course, when you do that, you bring in your missionaries, and then whatever country you take on, then you conquer, and you bring in the missionaries, who changes everything about the country, the lifestyle, the money, the religion, the language. This was also done, they tried to do this in the California missions, where Spain owned Mexico, and Mexico owned part of the southern United States with Spanish missions. Now the church is directly against slavery, but if you convert those slaves to Catholicism, they can be yours. And for 400 years, the church has banned books. Banned books by Kepler, Galileo, Copernicus, and later day books like The Hunchback of Notre Dame, The Count of Monte Cristo, Les Miserables, The Three Musketeers. And they finally abolished this in 1966, when I was 11. And they had a rating codes on films. From 1935 to 1978, they had the National Legion of Decency, which put a rating code on films, which means that if your film didn't have a good code, no one's going to buy tickets to see it, and you lose money. The purpose of a film is to make money and to make an artistic statement, so scenes had to be cut from important films in the 60s like Spartacus or A Streetcar Named Desire, as well as The 7-Year Itch. What I'm saying here is when you ban books, that means you're afraid of something. That's what it means. Now the most controversial part. And here we go. Starting in the late 80s, there was a problem called sex abuse with priests. Actually, 99% of all priests are wonderful. But it's 1% that are bad actors and bad apples. So out of 400,000 priests, between 4,000 and 7,000 of them are not good to have around. And what the church, and there was a study done on this, the John Jay Commission studied in the U.S. 11,000 allegations from 1950 to 2002, and studied about 5,000 priests, and found out that these problems with sexual molestation happened in 80% of the time with boys between 11 and 17, and with girls about 20% of the time. When a molestation occurred, the priests were then given counseling or moved to another parish. They were just kicked over to the side. The victims weren't counseled at all. Of course, pedophilia is a felony, and she's punishable by jail time. But the church moved them around. Back in the 90s, in my opinion, there should have been one strike policy, one strike and you're out. If allegations were found out, the police should be called and investigated. If the priest was found guilty, they should be removed. But this wasn't done, and especially with this man here, Father John Gagan, who was a priest in the Boston Diocese, and over a 30-year period, he raped 150 boys. And he was moved around 6 times by Cardinal Bernard Law. Gagan was caught, was put in jail, he was killed in jail. Law had to resign in disgrace, but then they rehired him and put him as an archbishop in Italy, and he doesn't speak Italian. So this is what happened. The church would just move the priests. This is, instead of dealing with the problem up front. So we'll take a look at this. This has resulted in 4,000 lawsuits in America about these sexual abuse cases. And I know this is difficult to talk about. The church has lost $5 billion because of this. And there are actually law firms like this that advertise on cable to try and get the money behind this, because the law firms take 30% of this, and the law firms have taken $1.5 billion. The average settlement is $268,000. Of course, the law firms take 30%, so you get $200,000, and they're not made in a lump sum, they are made over payments times. So what do you get for $200,000? Well, in the villages here, you can get a garage, a golf cart, and a bathroom. You don't get much at all. On a more serious note, this man is crying because as a child he was molested, and he was embarrassed, he was humiliated, he didn't know where to turn to, and now all he does is cry about it, and his family, all they can do is put their hands on him like this. This should have been taken care of. This is an embarrassment. Let's take a look at the rogues gallery of bad actors like Cardinal Brady. Cardinal Connor resigned. Cardinal Mahoney resigned, fired. Cardinal O'Brien ousted out. And McCarrick ran a sex ring. This has gone on. Even in just last month, the city of Oakland filed for bankruptcy over 330 child abuse lawsuits. Yet the church owns in Rockland, in Oakland, they own $3 billion worth of property, including a shopping mall and doctor's offices. More than 150 priests were associated with the Archdiocese of Baltimore this spring. It was found that they abused over 600 children in the past 80 years. This broke the heart out of communities in Oakland and in Baltimore. All you can do is feel sad about this. Imagine what this man feels like. I'm a victim of sexual abuse by Catholic clergy. I couldn't imagine it. Or this woman speaking out about herself or her brother. This guy ran a real estate scam. There's too many scandals. And this occurred didn't occur just in the United States. This occurred in Canada, in Europe, in Central America, in Honduras, in Guatemala. This occurred in South America, and particularly in Ireland. Pope Francis came to Ireland 7 years ago, and he spent most of his time apologizing about what happened to people like this, who carry around their grief with them. And what Francis didn't know was this, about the Magdalene laundries. In Ireland, back a couple generations ago, like in the 40s, 50s, women that were unwed mothers, prostitutes, former prostitutes, even flirtatious women, runaways, druggies, and women kicked out of their own home, they were sent to this facility, which is an asylum, to be able to do penance, to work themselves to do better. Specifically, doing laundry chores or doing sewing. This is a mini-series about this. So tens of thousands of women were held there and locked up at night, as well as when an Irish Catholic woman had a baby out of wedlock, the Catholic Church would take care of them, but sometimes, in thousands of cases, they would sell them, the babies, to rich couples in America. This happened with the film Philomena. So all these things did happen, but the Pope, when he went there, didn't even know about it. It should have been addressed. And as many as 330,000 children were abused by the Catholic Church in between 50 and 2020. And the new priorities of the Catholic Pope for most people should be addressing the abuse scandal, because this is beyond belief, and the church in the cycle. This also made the movie Spotlight, which highlighted this. Okay, so I've talked enough about it. Why? This is because of celibacy. That is, the church is the only one that I know about where the nuns and priests can't marry. This then means there's no outlet for some of these people, and so they turn to small children. This is not good at all. And all the other religions, like a Baptist minister, or if you're a rabbi, you can get married. Even in the Greek Orthodox Church, the priest can get married, but not remarried. So there's a problem with this. They should really have a psychological test like the Army does to weed out priests to come in. Not every man who wants to be a priest should be one. That's clearly obvious. And there should be more of a distinction about this. But it's celibacy that's the main problem. People have biological needs. And because of this, the seminary enrollment in the United States has plummeted, with high school and college ones at graduate level. To be a priest is a little bit more difficult today than what it used to be in recruiting them, because there's only about 42,000 left in America. And the number of Catholics has increased in the blue, but the number of priests has declined. There's one priest for every 2,000 parishioners around the world. 50,000 parishes out of 220,000 have no priest whatsoever. There's clearly a problem with this. Now with the nuns, there used to be 186,000 nuns in America in the 60s. But now that's plummeted to about 40,000. This is because women can go out and have a great education and make money in the working world. But I like to make fun of them doing this. But actually I admire them a lot because they are on the forefront of education and healthcare and social services. So, in historic shift, Pope Francis allowed women, this just made the newspaper, and I have the article right here. Let's see what it says. It says, women's voice is expected to be prominent at Vatican meeting. Well, nice to be heard, but wonderful when there's more action behind what's heard. So, the nuns really should be more involved. They can become bishops, but they cannot give masses or have more other important functions. And certainly there's been some influential nuns, like Mother Teresa, one in the slums of Calcutta, and Sister Bernadette, who saw an apparition in France 150 years ago, and to date, 5 million people visit this shrine in France a year. That's significant numbers. And so why can't women in the Catholic Church be priests is because a man will not let a woman tell them how to practice religion. This comes up over and over again. Yet the number of sisters has declined, the number of priests has declined. And I go to one, if I had a problem, I'd go to a sister. I trust them. They're beautiful people too. They should have more prominent role in the church, and an equal role. This happened even in my own, I was raised a Baptist, so this happened with me. The Southern Baptist Convention, not with me, but refused to take back a megachurch because it has women pastors. So the Baptist church is just as guilty of this kind of thing also. So it happens in religions. And but the number of Catholics have increased throughout, and especially in Africa. And we were in Kenya, and 20% of the population is Catholic there. They all speak Swahili and English, and all of them that I met had Protestant names. And the church is has a problem with homosexuality. The last Pope, Pope Benedict, called being gay a mortal sin. Well, love is hard to find, and if you can find love with someone your own sex, so be it. And but the Pope Francis has taken a little bit of a new direction. Someone is gay, who am I to judge? Okay, that's fine on the verbiage, but they don't officiate weddings, and they are losing the gay community. And even the Methodist Church has a problem with this. Even though the Methodists are very liberal and let in lesbian, gays, and bisexuals and transgenders, they have lost 20% of their parishioners because when the minister is gay, then they leave. So this is the problem. And people have guilt trips, especially with the Catholic Church, if they have lust, detractions, or they watch porn, they have a guilt trip and have to go to confessions. It's a bit medieval, but it's fine in a way. And that beautiful baby that you produced, well, it's not so beautiful anymore. It has an ugly mark on it that needs to be erased, and that's called original sin, and that to me is contradictory about love. And the church approves birth control by using the rhythm method, and couples who use the rhythm method are called parents. It doesn't work. I don't know what's wrong in having a woman take a pill, tricking her body to make sure the egg isn't released. Men can have a vasectomy. I had one. So that's fine to do that. And they don't even cover the health. The church is an entity and is considered a person in the United States, so it has feelings, so they can get away with not paying for contraceptive devices for their employees. And this all comes down to the woman. Keep abortion legal, pro-abortion, anti-abortion, it all puts women in the crosshairs. And what I want to say about this is virginal, old white men have no business telling a woman to do with their body. No business at all. As well as politicians, enough. Let people decide and make their own choices and their own fate. Okay, and this is a personal problem I have with a guy named Pope Pius XII, who was Pope when Mussolini and Hitler were around. He didn't stand up to him because he thought communism took over, the Russians came in and communists took over, that they would discourage religion. Well, I got some problems with him. So he should have stood up on the line and said something. This is clearly obvious. And Catholics have these values along with other religions around the world. I don't know about chastity. So, and the last thing I want to talk about is Catholics have a problem with humanists. They came around about 800 years ago, and they believe that man is more at the center of things, that there are consequences for the choices that we make, and we should have an outlook rooted in science and see problems looking at it rationally, not spiritually as much, and get rid of the dogma and the superstition behind things. So they have not made a reconciliation with this that really should be done to be able to get along with other people. So whether you're a pope, a bishop, a priest, or a nun, these people over the last 20 centuries, or a Greek Orthodox priest, these people over the centuries have put in tens of millions of man hours and person hours to be able to counsel the needy, to feed the needy, to clothe the poor, to be there when families have problems, and we all have problems, to give hope when there isn't any, to give spiritual guidance, to give people a place, a shelter, to be able to help them. That's what they're there for, for people to help. And I believe that these churches like this, and other ones, and even mosques, and other temples, they make the community strong. Without them, they would make the community very weak. And so I believe that healthy Christians make healthy churches and to love one another. And that when we give presentations here in the villages, and we talk about religion, or even about climate change, is show both sides. Because it's a two-way street. Show the two sides of what's going on. Don't take the cheap shot. Don't take pot shots. Show both sides. If you think there's climate change, then show both sides about a pro-environmentalist side or an anti-one. But do that in your own home. You take two sides. So do that when you give presentations. So why I love my Catholic faith? Let me count the ways and love the church. Thank you. I am done with this.